I am going to just walk you through our assignments this week before you get into our first lecture. It's a quick lecture this week, so it's not going to take very much time, and I just thought, hey, let's put it both together. So, real quick, our assignments this week can be found on online class assignments 4/27 through 5/1. That's right, we're making it to May, which is crazy. And when you go in here, of course, this first page has got all of the good stuff on there. So this shows you everything that we're doing this week. This week you do have one more round of lecture. We are talking about mood and tone today, and you're going to submit your notes. Please pay attention if I've given you any feedback on your notes. If I'm asking for something different, try out a different way of doing notes this week. You have reading questions this week, so that's similar to last week as well. This is due on Thursday. Something that is different this week is instead of a class discussion, we are having a Dear Abby advice letter. And when we're done going over this page, I will go over that Dear Abby advice letter with you. But the last thing that I wanted to point out is that this week you need to accomplish Conventions of English 11, your focus area on Summit. On May 4th, that line is going to pass. So your focus area will be input into your gradebook. This needs to be done on the Summit platform. You need to request the exam. And if you are struggling with it next week, you may come to my office hours and ask for help. But you need to show me evidence that you have taken notes on that content area, and you need to have attempted it 2 times on your own and not passed it. So I'm more than happy to help you, but I do need you to take the initiative and try on your own first. So let's take a second and let's look at this Dear Abby advice letter. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dear Abby. Dear Abby was a columnist that was really popular when I was younger, and definitely popular. Your parents probably will know who it is. But essentially what Dear Abby did is people would write letters asking for her advice anonymously, and she would offer advice back to them. So I gave you an example of her work here. I linked just a website where she still has, that's her, where she still has some of her letters. So there's a good example of what you might see for one of her advice letters. But for this assignment, you are going to be Dear Abby to Holden. So Holden has written you a letter just kind of outlining some of his problems. And I want you to write him a response, and I want it to be appropriate to the time period, so the 1950s, and then also to his current situation. So you can use any ideas from the text that you would like, you can make it creative as you would like, but I would like you to pay attention to your tone and make sure that it's appropriate for the task. You definitely need to make sure that you have an addressee, and actually I threw that in there for you. You need a closing and a signature, and you need about 3 to 4 short paragraphs. So here's Holden's letter here. I put it in this box. And then down here, I've put the space for your response. So this is something I'm hoping that you have fun with, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys come up with. So that's what we have going on for this week. But right now, let's jump into our lecture. We are talking about mood versus tone, and then we're going to connect this to The Catcher in the Rye. Mood and tone are something that are very commonly misconstrued. People will use them interchangeably, and that's not necessarily the case. Because we've been doing so much nonfiction work and reading all of these op-eds, we've focused quite a bit on tone because that's a huge part of rhetorical devices, but we haven't focused a lot on mood. So let's first discuss what the difference is between mood and tone. So mood is the overall atmosphere that a piece of writing has. Mood is way more about how the reader feels after reading a piece. So this is about how you feel when you are reading The Catcher in the Rye, or a book that you're really into, or I don't know, like a post on Instagram. I don't know what you're reading. But moods can be all different types of words. Like, you can be amused, you can feel calm after you read something, you can feel liberated, you can be annoyed. I think I'm annoyed a lot of the time reading The Catcher in the Rye. You can be jealous or cranky, dignified, refreshed, whatever. And I put that little like Calvin mood grid because I think that's a good representation of it's how we feel when we read a piece. Now, it can't just be how you feel because that's a little bit subjective, but it can be how you feel based on a few different things that an author can do. So, mood is really created through 5 different things. Mood is created through setting. So, how does the author describe the setting of the story? Is it dreary? Is it light? Is it positive? It can also be created through style. So, how sentences are structured, figurative language, the ease of reading. It can be through viewpoint. So, does the author choose to use first, second, or third person point of view? And how does that impact the mood? How does that make you feel? Tone, which we're going to talk about next, actually impacts the mood. So we'll get into that in a little bit. And then genre. So, for example, when you read a lighthearted romance novel, you kind of expect to feel good at the end because you know that they're going to fall in love and live happily ever after. But when you read a thriller or a mystery novel, you kind of want to be you want to feel a little unsettled, you want it to be mysterious, and you want to feel that vibe. I put up there some positive moods and some negative moods. These are just a bunch of different words that you might be able to start to feel when you're reading a text. Now, mood is different than tone. Tone is about the author's attitude towards a subject. And so when we were looking at our op-eds and when we were reading Barbara Einreich's Nickel and Dimed, this is like way back last semester. I know your brain probably can't even remember. But when we were talking about those things, we were talking about how the author kind of had some different attitudes towards the reader, towards the topic that they were talking about. We said that Barbara was really, like she was kind of snarky, right? Well, this is different. Tone in literary texts is not necessarily about the tone of the author. We're not necessarily talking about what Salinger's attitude is, but tone in a piece of literature will be about the speaker or the narrator. So for us, tone is a lot more about Holden and how Holden's emotional state and attitude exists throughout the text. So I put a bunch of different tone words on there. I know that we've talked a lot about like positive and negative tones, but we really want to move away from like just using the words positive and negative. There's so many other adjectives out there that we can use, but positive and negative are good places to start. It just gets us in the direction we want to go. So tone is developed through a handful of things. It's developed through the word choice of the narrator, and as we've been learning, Holden has some very unique word choices. Some are better than others. He tends to cuss a lot when he's frustrated. He loves the word phony. Sentence construction of the narrator. Holden is pretty simple in his sentence construction. But he's also talking to himself a lot. He's using a lot of stream of consciousness where we're allowed into his thoughts. Tone can be developed through what the narrator chooses to focus on. So Holden really focuses on a lot of his negative reactions to other people and his loneliness, to be perfectly honest. Tone is developed through the narrator's perception of and reaction to sights and sounds, odors, touch, and taste. And tone can change over a story. So as a character changes in a literary piece, the tone can also begin to shift as well. You will have to decide if Holden's tone changes dramatically in this piece. When we look at mood in The Catcher in the Rye, we want to just remember that it's how you feel as you read it. So some words that you might see associated with mood in The Catcher in the Rye are dark, bleak, depressing, gloomy. It's kind of informal. When it comes to mood, if you can defend it through these elements, the style, setting, viewpoint, tone, genre, if you can defend that feeling through those 5 things, it's probably correct. And someone else might have a slightly different word than you do, but if they can defend it through those elements, then it's part of the mood, okay? Now with tone, we want to remember that this is represented through Holden. So we see Holden being cynical. We see him being sarcastic. We see him being super judgmental. But we also see him having this like longing. He wants relationship with people so bad and just cannot make a connection. And we also see him being nostalgic for how things used to be in the past and for just his childhood. So these would be some words that I would probably associate with tone in The Catcher in the Rye. So hopefully this kind of gives you a good idea of the difference between mood and then tone. We are going to be paying attention to tone in our Dear Abby letter, but this is just something to pay attention to as you read. If you have questions or if you need help with anything, please jump into my office hours. I'm always really excited to see you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll talk to you later. Bye.